Hey guys, I hope your weekend is going well. I just wanted to do something a little different today. I thought I would read to you. And now if you don't want me to read to you, you can just read the chapter on your own. That's fine. But if you would like to follow along, I just thought it'd be something a little different. And I know a lot of you have been saying that you're kind of struggling with the reading on your own. So I just thought it'd be something fun, a little different. So we are on page 206 if you have the actual book. If you don't have the actual book, we are in the middle of chapter 9, and we are at the part where there's like there's a page break, and it says, we don't give up, we can't. So that is where we are at now. We just read the part where TJ was kind of talking to the kids and saying like, I don't need you. I am hanging out with RW and Melvin, which we found out are Jeremy and Lily and Jean's older brothers. So that means that they are white. And so TJ is saying, you know, I'm hanging out with them. I don't need you. They treat me really, really great. Kind of like trying to show off, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know what TJ is doing. So then that happens, and then Mama and Papa were talking to people about shopping in Vicksburg. That's where they were shopping, so they didn't have to shop at the Wallace store anymore. And these other families were saying, you know, we can't afford to do that anymore. We're losing all of our backing. It's too dangerous to go against the Wallaces. And so people are kind of backing out of being able to go to shop at Vicksburg anymore. So that's where we're at now. That's what's happened so far in chapter 9. So like I said, we are on page 206. We are ready where it says, we don't give up, we can't. So if you're reading online, go ahead and scroll there if you can. Or you can just listen. That's fine too. All right, so after Mr. Morrison had retired to his own house and Big Ma and the boys and I had gone to bed, Papa and Mama remained on the porch, talking in hushed whispers, and it was comforting listening to them. Mama's voice a warm, lilting murmur, and Papa's a quiet, easing, flowing hum. After a few minutes, they left the porch and their voices grew faint. I climbed for the bed, careful not to awaken Big Ma, and I went to the window. They were walking slowly across the moon-soaked grass, their arms around each other. First thing tomorrow, I'm going around to see how many folks are still in this thing, Papa said, stopping under the oak near the house. I want to know before we make that trip to Vicksburg. Mama was quiet a moment. I don't think you and Mr. Morrison go to Vicksburg right now, David. Not with the Wallisons threatened people like they are. Wait a while. Papa reached into the tree and broke off a twig. We can't just stop taking care of business because of them Wallaces, Mary. You know that. Mama did not reply. Papa leaned against the tree. I think I'll take Stacy with me. Now, David, no. He'll be 13 next month, honey, and he needs to be with me more. I can't take him with me on the railroad, but I can take him with me when I go round here. And I want him to know business, how to take care of it, how to take care of things when I ain't around. David, he's just a boy. Baby, a boy get as big as Stacy down here, and he's near a man. He's got to know a man's things. He's got to know how to handle himself. I know, but, Mary, I want him strong, not a fool like TJ. He's got more brains and learnin's than that, Mama snapped. I know, Papa said quietly. Still, it worries me, seeing TJ turning like he is. Seems to me it isn't bothering Joe Avery much. He doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. Papa allowed the silence to seep between them before he said, It's not like you, honey, to be bitter. I'm not bitter, said Mama, folding her arms across her chest. It's just that boy's gotten out of hand. It doesn't seem like nobody's doing anything about it. The other day, Joe told me he couldn't do nothing with TJ anymore. That's a hard thing for a man to admit. He could still put a good strip of leather against his bottom, can't he? It was clear that Mama was unsympathetic to Mr. Avery's problem. Said he tried, but his health's so poor he ended up with a bad coughing spell. Got so sick from it he had to go to bed. After that, Fanny tried to whip the boy, but TJ's stronger than her, and it didn't do no good. Papa paused and then added, He's gotten pretty sassy too, I understand. Well, sassy or not, Mama grumbled, they better figure out some way of getting that boy back on the right track before he's headed in for a whole lot of trouble. Papa sighed heavily and left the tree. We better go in. I've got to get an early start if I'm going to go round to everybody. You're still set on going to Vicksburg? I told you I was. Mama laughed lightly in exasperation. Sometimes, David Logan, I wonder why I didn't marry sweet, quiet Ronald Carter or nice, mild Harold Davis. Because, woman, Papa said, putting his arm around her, you took one look at big, handsome me and no one else would do. Then they both laughed and together moved slowly to the side of the house. 7 families, including ours, still refused to shop at the Wallace store, even with the threat of the chain gang. Mama said that the number was not significant enough to hurt the Wallaces, only enough to rile them, and she worried, afraid for Papa, Stacy, and Mr. Morrison to make the trip. But nothing she could say could change Papa's mind, and they left as planned on Wednesday morning, long before dawn. On Thursday, when they were to return, it began to rain, a hard, swelling summer rain, which brought a premature green darkness to the land and forced us to leave our hoeing of the cotton field and return to the house. As the thunder rumbled overhead, Mama peered out the window at the dark road. Wonder what's keeping 'em, she said, more to herself than anyone else. Probably got held up someplace, said Big Ma. Could have stopped to get out of this storm. Mama turned from the window. You're most likely right, she agreed, picking up a pair of Christopher John's pants to mend. As the evening fell into total darkness, we grew silent. The boys and I sang very little, Mama and Big Ma concentrating on their sewing, their brows furrowed. My throat grew tight, and without knowing why I was afraid, I was. Mama, I said, they all right, ain't they? Mama stared down at me. Course they're all right. They're just late, that's all. But Mama, you suppose maybe somebody done... I think you children better go to bed, Mama said, sharply without letting me finish. But I want to wait up for Papa, objected Little Man. Me too, said sleepy Christopher John. You'll see him in the morning. Now get to bed. Since there was nothing we could do but obey, we went to bed. But I could not sleep. A cold fear crept over my body, churning my stomach and tightening its grip on my throat. Finally, when I felt like I was going to be sick from it, I rose and paddled silently into Mama and Papa's room. Mama was standing with her back to me, her arms folded, and Big Ma was still patching. Neither of them had heard the door swing open. I started to speak, but Mama was talking, and I decided not to interrupt her. I got a good mind to saddle Lady and go looking for him, she said. Now, Mary, what good would that do? Big Ma questioned. You run round there on that mare by yourself in the dark and rain? But something's happened to him. I can feel it. It's just in your mind, child, Big Ma scoffed unconvincingly. Them menfolk all right. No, said Mama, shaking her head. The Wallaces aren't just in my mind. They... And she stopped suddenly and stood very still. Mary? Thought I heard something. The dog started barking, and she turned, half running across the room. Pushing up the lock in a mad haste, she swung open the door and cried into the storm, David? David? Unable to stay put, I dashed across the room. Cassie, what you doing up, girl? Asked Big Ma, swatting me as I passed her. But Mama, staring into the wet night, had said nothing when I reached her side. Is it them? I asked. Out of the darkness, a round light appeared, moving slowly across the drive, and Mr. Morrison's voice drifted softly to us. Go on, Stacy, he said. I got him. And then Stacy, a flashlight in his hand, came into sight, followed by Mr. Morrison, carrying Papa. David, Mama gasped, her voice a frightened whisper. Big Ma, standing behind me, stepped back, pulling me with her. She stripped the bed to its sheets and ordered, Put him right here, Mr. Morrison. As Mr. Morrison climbed the stairs, we could see that Papa's left leg stuck straight out, immobilized by his shotgun strapped to it with a rope. His head was wrapped in a rag, which with the dark redness of his blood had seeped. Mr. Morrison eased Papa through the doorway, careful not to hit his strapped leg, and laid him gently on the bed. Mama went immediately to the bed and took Papa's hand. Hey, baby, Papa said faintly. I'm all right. Just got my leg broke, that's all." "Wagon rolled over it," said Mr. Morrison, avoiding Mama's eyes. "We better get that leg set. Didn't have time on the road." "But his head," Mama said, her eyes questioning Mr. Morrison. But Mr. Morrison said nothing further, and Mama turned to Stacy. "You all right, son?" "Yes'm," Stacy said, his face strangely ashen and his eyes on Papa. "Then get out of those wet things. We don't want you catching pneumonia. Cassie, you go to bed." "I'll get a fire started," said Big Ma, disappearing into the kitchen as Mama turned to the closet to find sheets for making a cast. But Stacy and I remained rooted, watching Papa, and did not move until Christopher John and Little Man made a sleepy entrance. "What's going on?" asked Little Man, frowning into the light. "Go back to bed, children," Mama said, rushing to keep them from coming further into the room. But before she could reach them, Christopher John spied Papa on the bed and shot past her. "Papa, you got back!" Mr. Morrison swung him upward before he could jar the bed. "What's the matter?" asked Christopher John, wide awake now. "Papa, what's the matter? How come you got that thing on your head?" "Your papa's asleep," said Mama as Mr. Morrison set Christopher John back down. "Stacy, you take them to bed, and you get out of those clothes." None of us stirred. "Move when I tell you," Mama hissed impatiently, her face more worried than angry. Stacy herded us into the boys' room. As soon as the door closed behind us, I asked, "Stacy, how bad Papa hurt?" Stacy fell around for the lamp, lit it, then plopped warily on the side of the bed. We huddled around him. "Well?" Stacy shook his head. "I don't know. His leg's busted up by the wagon. And he's shot." "Shot?" Christopher John and Little Man exclaimed fearfully, but I was silent, too afraid now to speak, to think. "Mr. Morrison says he don't think the bullet hurt him much. He just thinks it just hit his skin. Here." Stacy ran his forefinger along the right temple. "And it didn't sink in nowhere." "But who'd shoot Papa?" asked Little Man, greatly agitated. "Can't nobody just shoot Papa." Stacy stood then and motioned Christopher John and Little Man under the covers. "I said too much already, Cassie. Go on to bed." I continued to sit, my mind unable to move. "Cassie, go on now like Mama said." "How the wagon roll over him? How'd he get shot?" I blurted out angrily, already plotting revenge against whoever had dared hurt my father. "Cassie, you go on to bed." "Ain't moving till you tell me." "I'll call Mama," he threatened. "She's too busy," I said, folding my arms and feeling confident he would tell the story. He went to the door and opened it. Christopher John and Little Man and I watched him eagerly, but as soon as he closed the door and came back to the bed. "What are they doing?" asked Little Man. "Big Ma's tending Papa's head." "Well, what happened out there?" I repeated. Stacy sighed despairingly and sat down. "We was coming back from Vicksburg when the back wheels came off," he said, his voice in a hollow whisper. "It was already dark and it was raining too. Papa and Mr. Morrison, they thought somebody done messed with them wheels for both of them to come off at the same time like they did. Then when I told them I'd seen two boys near the wagon when we was in Vicksburg, Papa said we didn't have much time to unhitch and unload the wagon, like we should put them wheels back on. He thought somebody was coming after us. So after we found the wheels and the bolts, Papa told me to hold the reins real tight on Jack to keep him still. Jack, he was real skittish because of the storm. Then Mr. Morrison went and lifted the wagon all by himself. And it was heavy too, but Mr. Morrison lifted it like it wasn't nothing. Then Papa slipped the first wheel on. That's when he got shot." "But who?" I started. "A truck came up the road and stopped behind us while we was trying to get that wheel on. But didn't none of us hear it coming because of the rain and the thunder and all, and they didn't put their lights on till the truck stopped. Anyways, there was 3 men in that truck, and soon as Papa seen them, he reached for his shotgun. That's when they shot him, and he fell back with his left leg under the wagon. Then Jack reared up and scared by the shot, and I couldn't hold him, and the wagon rolled over Papa's leg." His voice cracked sharply, and he exploded guiltily. It's my fault his leg's busted." I thought on what he had said and laid my hand on his shoulder and said, "Nah, it ain't. It's them men's." Stacy did not speak for a while, and I did not prod him to go on. Finally, he cleared his throat and continued huskily. Soon as I could, I tied Jack to a tree and ran back to Papa, but Papa told me not to move him and to get down in the gully. Then after them men shot Papa, they come down trying to get Mr. Morrison, but he was too fast and strong for 'em. I couldn't see anything that happened, 'cause they didn't always stay in front of them headlights. But I did see Mr. Morrison pick up one of them men like he was nothing but a sack of chicken feathers and fling him down on the ground so hard he must have broken his back. Mr. Morrison's really strong. Ain't never seen nothing like it before in my whole life. Then one of the other two that had the gun shot Mr. Morrison, but it didn't hit him. Mr. Morrison, he ducked away from the headlights into the darkness, and they went after him. Couldn't see nothing then, he said, glancing towards the door where Papa lay. Heard bones cracking, heard somebody cursing and crying. Then I couldn't hear nothing but the rain, and I was real scared. Afraid they'd come kill Mr. Morrison. But they didn't, did little man, his eyes bright with excitement. Stacy nodded. Next thing I see was a man coming real slow-like into the headlights and pick up the man lying in the middle of the road, the one that Mr. Morrison thrown down. He got him into the truck, then came back and helped the other one. That one looked like he had a broken arm. It was just hanging all crazy like at his side. Then they turned the truck around and drove away. Then what? Little man inquired. Stacy shrugged. Nothing. We put on the other wheel and come on home. Who was it? I rasped, holding my breath. Stacy looked at me and said flatly, "The Wallaces, I think." There was a fearful moment silent. Then Christopher John, tears in his dark eyes, asked, "Stacy, is Papa gonna die?" "No, course not," Stacy denied too quickly. "But he was so still." "I don't want Papa to die," wailed little man. "He's just sleeping, like Mama said, that's all." "Well, when's he gonna wake up?" cried Christopher John, the tears escaping down his plump cheeks. In the morning," said Stacy, putting on a comforting arm around both Christopher John and little man. "Just you wait and see. He'll be just fine come morning." Stacy, still in his wet, muddy clothes, said nothing else, and neither did the rest of us. All the questions had been answered, yet we feared and sat silently listening to the rain, soft now upon the roof, watching the door behind which Papa lay and wished for morning. All right, so we are done reading the chapter for today. We will continue on with chapter 10 on Wednesday. I hope you guys are really enjoying the book. It is getting intense. This is just the beginning of the pretty intense parts. So I want you to think about how the Wallaces are after them, and Mr. Morrison retaliated. He threw one of them into the road, probably broke their back, or at least severely injured them, and he broke another one of their arms. So kind of think of maybe what ramifications that could cause for the family. Your assignment is a quick one. It's posted right below, so make sure you get that done, and I will talk to you later. See you later. Bye.